I never thought you could rent an apartment that was technically inside a parking garage. But when you're freelancing and the convention budget is paper thin, you click the cheapest Airbnb within walking distance of the expo center and hope for the best. The listing called it an industrial micro loft. In person, it was a glassed-in cube on the third sublevel of a downtown garage, walled off from rows of commuter sedans by chain link and frosted panels. I checked in around 5 p.m., the height of traffic, and figured the rumble overhead was normal city ambience. The place smelled of brake dust and pine saw, but it had Wi-Fi and a futon. I threw on headphones and started editing shots. Maybe an hour later, I heard what sounded like my rental car's alarm, distant but familiar. I tried unlocking it from the app. Nothing. A minute later, the alarm cut, and heavy footsteps slapped the ramp outside my wire wall. I muted Spotify. Someone was pacing along the chain link, dragging something metal that screeched against the fence. "Hey," I called, figuring it was security. "Did my alarm bother you?" A man's voice answered too calmly. "Key fob batteries die all the time." Then the footsteps kept circling, slow, like he was mapping the perimeter. I realized the only proper door was the one I'd come through, and it opened toward the garage, not into the unit. No other exits. I checked my phone. 3% battery, and of course, zero signal this far underground. Normally I'd keep a spare pack, but I'd left it charging at the expo booth. The footsteps stopped outside the frosted panel that served as a window. His silhouette filled the glass. He rapped once, thin knuckles on plastic. "Saw your gear in the trunk. Bet it's pricey." I yanked the futon cushions to barricade the door. The lock looked like it had been installed yesterday. Wood screws into sheet metal, nothing more. I scanned for weapons and settled on a cheap aluminum tripod. He started cutting the chain link with bolt cutters. Tiny clinks at first, then faster. Panic blew any logical thought out of my head. I remembered the host bragging the unit had a maintenance hatch connecting to building utilities. I found it behind the water heater, a 4-foot hole with a ladder dropping into darkness. Any other night, I'd worry about rats or asbestos. I kicked the hatch open and lowered myself, clutching the tripod. The air below was warm and smelled of oil. I heard the last link snap above me, and his boots hit the floor of the loft. I started down the ladder, phone clenched in my teeth for light. Halfway, the battery died. Below, I felt concrete and started crawling blind until my hand hit a steel door marked "Exit to Street." Blessed daylight glowed around its frame. I shoved it. It didn't budge. Behind me, a flashlight beam flicked on where the ladder ended. Desperation gave me leverage. I rammed the crash bar with my shoulder until the mechanism coughed open. Evening air and city horns flooded in. I sprinted into an alley full of commuters stuck in gridlock, waving and shouting until a delivery driver rolled down his window. I pointed back at the door, told him someone was chasing me. The guy leaned on his horn, drawing curious faces. The flashlight jerked, then winked out. Whoever it was didn't fancy witnesses. By the time police arrived, my loft door was padlocked again, pristine. The host texted an apology about a misunderstanding with garage staff and offered a refund and 5-star trade. I grabbed my gear, still there weirdly, and booked a hotel above ground. I keep the tripod scarred and bent as proof. When folks ask why I'll pay triple to avoid a bargain Airbnb, I just tell them underground parking has terrible cell reception and leave it at that. My girlfriend Tash and I booked a 3-night stay in what the listing called a Heritage Monk's Hermitage halfway up the ranges. It sounded mystic, and the photos showed a stone hut under towering pines. So we figured perfect digital detox. Plus, mid-January heat wave meant the city felt like a toaster. Mountain shade sounded dreamy. The host was Brother Silas, although Airbnb verified his ID like any other. He messaged a lot. Long, flowery notes about mindful silence and offering ourselves to the woods. I chalked it up to hippie marketing. First red flag, no cellular service after the last bend. The track was single lane, dust kicking up behind the Subaru. We arrived sweating and cranky. The hut was there all right, but so were 4 other cars and a ring of canvas tents surrounding a fire pit. A dozen people in gray robes stepped out, greeting us with slow bows. Tash whispered, "Is this a retreat?" Brother Silas emerged, bald and barefoot on hot gravel, smiling like melted wax. "Welcome, chosen pair. You arrived on the final day." I pulled up the booking. Definitely private rental. He insisted the retreat ended tonight, and we'd have the hut to ourselves. We considered bailing, but the next motels were hours down switchbacks, and the forecast said roadworks would close the pass at dusk. So we shrugged, hydrated, and waited out the day. The pilgrims sang droning hymns while stacking logs to form a cage-like lattice over the fire pit. Around sunset, they carried in bundles of dry brush. I asked what the project was. Silas smiled. A vessel for burdens. Tash wanted to leave, closed road or not. Our tank was half, and the engine temp gauge had been flirting with red all climb. I convinced her one more night. People do weird rituals, no biggie. At 3 a.m., the woods were still a sauna. I stepped outside for air and saw flickers between the trunks. Torches moving downhill. The campers were headed toward the small creek, humming. I noticed they'd parked their cars across the only drivable exit, noses touching tailgates. I woke Tash. We shoved our bags into the Subaru and crept forward, but a robe blocked us. Hands raised, calmly saying the road was impure right now. His smile never cracked. We reversed back to the hut, headlights sweeping over that lattice construction. Something new sat inside. A life-sized wooden effigy, arms outstretched. Painted across its chest in bright red was the Celtic knot design embroidered on Tash's backpack. A weird coincidence until I saw her pack missing from the rear seat. That popped my city boy patience. I marched toward the creek, shouting. The robed crowd parted to let Silas through. He carried Tash's backpack like a sacrament. "Unburden," he said, and held a knife, not at me, but at the pack, sawing until the knot symbol peeled off. He tucked the cloth into the effigy's chest cavity. I snatched it back. Silas didn't fight, but the dozen others closed in. Tash yanked my arm, and we bolted uphill toward the hut, only structure with walls thicker than cloth. The crowd gave chase, surprisingly fast on bare feet over pine needles. Inside, we slammed the plank door and shoved the bunk against it. No lock. Heat made the tiny space dizzying. Through a gap, we saw more torches as they encircled the hut, chanting low, single-syllable notes that throbbed in my gut. I remembered the roof was cedar shakes, reachable from a rock ledge out the back window. We crawled out, scrambled up, then leapt into the dark. Rolled down a slope of leaf litter until my ankle screamed. Still, Tash dragged me into a gully thick with blackberry vines. We lay there as robes searched with lanterns, never looking low enough. Their chant faded toward dawn. Sunlight brought insects and silence. We surfaced, hobbled to the cars. Ours was blocked, but Silas's rusted van sat keys in under the visor. We stole it, bouncing down the track past their campsites, empty, tents gone, as if packed in the night. At the ranger station, we reported everything. 2 officers hiked up later that week and emailed to say they found nothing but ash in the pit. No effigy, no Brother Silas, no record of a heritage hermitage beyond the Airbnb page, which disappeared 5 hours after we fled. We still have her torn backpack flap pinned above the desk, a daily reminder to drive straight past any stay marketed as spiritually transformative. This happened 3 years ago, but the fallout keeps looping back, so I'm writing now to make sense of the pieces. Back then, I was part of a 4-person indie game studio. Me, our coder Ethan, QA lead Marisol, and our new investor, Dr. Lena Graff, a neurologist with a thing for VR. She flew us to Berlin to demo our horror prototype at a tech showcase. To save money, she booked an entire floor of an old Art Nouveau hotel that also listed on Airbnb as turnkey boutique apartments. The place was atmospheric, mosaic halls, brass birdcage elevator, rooms converted to mini-flats. Power in the district was spotty all week thanks to a rolling grid failure after a storm took out pylons. We shrugged it off. Demo kits had battery packs. Night 1, Lena unlocked a door labeled Service Only at the corridor's end and showed us a cramped server room she'd reserved. She rolled in a black Pelican case and told me, "Prototype backup, nobody touches." Door stayed padlocked after that. Jump to night 3. 1 a.m. code crunch turned to wine drunk truth or dare. Power flickered, died. Emergency strips lit red. Phones had no bars underground. Ethan groaned that Berlin's mesh network was supposed to stay up. We heard a metal door clank at the dark end of the hall. I assumed maintenance resetting breakers. Then a whir started, like a dentist's drill. Marisol opened her laptop to use the screen as a flashlight. Wi-Fi networks popped up, one after another. Names like Panopticon 001, 002, all 5 bars strong, yet password-free. Ethan clicked one, and every device in the hall chimed connection. Then all screens flooded white and displayed a single pulse icon. Marisol gasped, "That's our heartbeat shader from the game!" We hadn't pushed that build to cloud. Only the local server copy existed, locked in Lena's room. We scrambled there. The padlock dangled broken. Inside, the Pelican case sat open, empty. Ethernet cables hung from a portable rack, feeding boxy headsets lined in rows. Someone had been staging a live test using our code. At that moment, Lena's voice boomed from corridor speakers. Observe the autonomic spike when fear stimulus coincides with total sensory blackout. She sounded calm, lecture tone. We followed the voice into the stairwell. She was on the landing above, wearing one of the headsets, gesturing blindly, while a tablet in her hand graphed vitals. I shouted her name. She tilted the headset, eyes milky in the red light, muttering, "So much cleaner without optic noise." Then she jerked and collapsed. Tablet clattered downstairs. Building staff finally reached us. Apparently the street transformer had overloaded, tripping alarms. Paramedics revived Lena, but her retinal nerves were damaged. Doctors blamed a freak power surge through the headset. We flew home shaken. Police deemed it industrial sabotage. Someone had tampered with the devices, but the hotel's CCTV for our floor was overwritten by white static, starting exactly when the Wi-Fi networks appeared. Insurance forms, lawyers, NDAs, it blurred. Time jumped to 6 months ago. I get a certified package containing a single USB. No return address. Inside are log files timestamped that night. Lines of Lena's biometric data, and an IP trace to a shell company, owned by our primary rival publisher. Further, a draft email from Lena she never sent, saying she'd uncovered their espionage and was prepping evidence. I handed everything to the EU cybercrime unit. Last week, they raided the publisher's Prague office and seized racks of the same homemade routers we saw. Headlines say lawsuits are pending, and stock is tanking. Lena? She won't answer calls. Word is she took a settlement and quietly funds accessibility tech now. Ethan quit game dev. Marisol teaches high school coding. I still jump when the lights flicker. If you ever rent a boutique hotel floor through Airbnb and your benefactor insists on bringing private servers, do yourself a favor. Read the non-disclosure clauses twice and keep your own off-site backups. The video you might have seen, me sprinting through a parade float shaped like a giant trout, was clipped to 17 seconds and no context, so here's the long version. 2 summers ago, I booked an Airbnb above a bakery in Trout Falls. Population maybe 2,000, because my recipe blog had a partnership with a regional flour mill, and I needed small-town color. Coincidentally, their annual Trout Fest fell that weekend. Marching band, fish fry, beer tent, whole Norman Rockwell vibe. Day 1, everything was folksy. I interviewed the mill's manager, posted an Instagram reel of cheese curds, earned polite smiles. The bakery owner, Mrs. Cardwell, seemed thrilled a big city influencer picked her loft. She even left a fresh pie on the counter. Day 2, I noticed flyers stapled on utility poles. A pixelated photo of me, caption, "Outsider alert. This man wants to ruin Trout Falls." I laughed, assumed prank. That afternoon at the craft fair, kids pointed. A vendor refused my card, saying, "We don't serve traitors." I checked Twitter and saw a thread from a local handle. Screenshots of my old article criticizing overfishing, twisted into claims I wanted the trout hatchery closed, costing jobs. Hundreds of angry replies from accounts with trout emojis. I filmed a calm TikTok explaining the misunderstanding, but cell service choked. Post never uploaded. That night, someone pounded my door, shouting, "Get out, fish killer!" I called 911. The dispatcher put me on hold. Small-town resources, I figured. Hold music was polka, swear to God. Morning of the parade, bakery windows were soap-painted, carpetbagger. Mrs. Cardwell avoided eye contact. Street smelled of fryer oil and sun-baked asphalt. I tried blending into the crowd, camera down. A man in hatchery uniform shoulder-checked me, muttering, "Sick of cancel culture." Then the live float commentary began. Local radio DJ on PA introduced each float. When mine rolled by, yes, the giant trout, the DJ's tone changed. "Look who's graced us, folks. Mr. Internet, here to film our demise." Spotlight swiveled. Suddenly, my face on a portable LED screen. People booed. Someone either tripped or shoved me forward. I stumbled through ropes onto the float deck. The fiberglass trout mouth loomed open, so I ducked inside like instinct. Kids screamed. Pretty sure they thought it was scripted. That's the viral clip. Me popping out the gills and sprinting down Main. I aimed for the police tent. The chief listened, stone-faced, then asked why I'd trespassed on festival property. My account sounded absurd against the steady drum of polka. He offered to escort me to the county line for my own safety. But first, we had to settle damages to the float. I agreed to pay just to get moving. But when he led me toward his cruiser, protesters surrounded us chanting, "Let him talk." They weren't my supporters, just teens who smelled a censorship angle. Shoving escalated. Someone knocked the chief's hat off. Pepper spray came out. I slipped away in the chaos, cut through back alleys to the bakery, packed in 8 minutes. Mrs. Cardwell stood by the exit, holding my pie plate. She whispered, "I know you didn't mean harm," and handed back my cleaning fee in cash. Then she pointed to a side door that led to her husband's plumbing van. I drove non-stop to the interstate. Video of float fiasco hit regional news, edited for maximum slapstick. Hatchery Board issued a statement 2 days later saying they'd never heard of me. The Twitter thread vanished. Accounts deleted. To this day, I'm not sure if it was coordinated local gatekeeping or some bored troll who set things rolling. Emails to the police chief bounce. Airbnb refunded half after I forwarded screenshots of the flyers, but never delisted the bakery. If Trout Fest invites you to Grand Marshal next year, maybe pass unless you enjoy being the day's main attraction for reasons you'll never fully understand. Late March, I flew to Chicago for a job interview that offered relocation. Big deal for someone drowning in Atlanta rent. The recruiter booked me 2 nights in an Airbnb close to the hospital, where the CEO volunteered. Ironic foreshadowing. The listing said, "Historic medical loft, artist's dream." Photos showed exposed brick, old operating theater lights repurposed as chandeliers. The Uber dropped me in front of what still looked exactly like a hospital. Concrete ramp, faded emergency lettering. Storm clouds herded wind down the avenue. Inside, the lobby was half gallery, half triage ghost. Wheelchairs holding potted plants, nurse's station turned coffee bar. A self-check-in kiosk spat out a plastic wristband with my room number and a QR code for building maps. Elevator groaned me to the 4th floor, surgical ward. Room 412 retained its sliding glass doors and observation window. Rain pelted the panes so hard the motion sensor lights flickered. I shrugged, industrial chic. Around midnight, thunder rattled awake every migraine nerve I have. I stumbled to the tiny kitchenette for water, misjudged distance, and slammed my knee into a steel cabinet, dropping to the linoleum. Pain roared. I saw stars. When I stood, the knee buckled. I'd torn ligaments before. I knew the feeling. I grabbed my phone to order pain meds, but the storm killed Wi-Fi and LTE. QR code maps still worked offline, showing a first aid vending machine on floor 2. Crutches were out of the question. I MacGyvered 2 mop handles from the supply closet and hobbled to the elevator. Power blipped. Elevator lights died. Doors stuck half open. Stairwell time. Each step was agony. Halfway down, emergency strobes snapped on, painting walls blood red. An automated voice repeated, "Code black, shelter in place." I assumed tornado protocol, but city sirens were quiet. On floor 3 landing, I heard wheels squeaking below. Some cart pushed fast. I called out for staff. No answer. Squeaks stopped. I kept descending, entered the 2nd floor corridor. The map said first aid cabinet across from radiology. Radiology doors stood open, scanning room backlit by generator glow. The cabinet was there, sealed, needing payment via app, offline, useless. A gurney sat parked nearby, restraints dangling. My knee screamed. I almost considered strapping in and rolling myself somewhere. Then, the squeak returned behind me. At the far end, a figure in what looked like a still-stained surgeon's gown pushed another gurney. Their face was hidden under an old-style surgical cap and mask, fabric yellowed. "Hey, do you work here?" I asked. The figure tilted its head. Wheels squeaked faster toward me. Adrenaline overrode pain. I limped into radiology, slammed the door, hit lock. No immediate rattle. Maybe they'd passed. Generator whine grew louder, then stopped. Room plunged into dark, except residual lightning flashes through glass bricks. Within that strobe, I saw the silhouette at the door window, hand raised, holding what looked like bone saw wire. I scanned for exit. Only a lead-lined maintenance hatch set waist-high. I pried it, crawled into a duct barely bigger than me, knee throbbing hell. I heard the door click open behind. Someone stepped inside, dragging metal across floor tiles, slow, deliberate taps. The duct branched to a vertical shaft with a ladder. I climbed one-legged to the roof vent. Night wind slapped rain against the grate, but fresh air meant survival. With superhuman yank, I popped the grate, rolled out onto gravel roofing. City lights flickered through sheets of rain. Half a block away was a lit rooftop bar on a modern hotel. I crawled to the edge, waved like a maniac until patrons pointed. Security called 911. Firefighters hauled me down via ladder truck. I half expected the masked figure to appear in the crowd, but no one suspicious was found in the building. The Airbnb host later emailed a vague apology, claiming a reenactor from the Historical Society broke protocol during the blackout. Refund offered. NDA hinted. I took neither, but I did take the safer offer. A remote position that lets me work from home, far from any building with defibrillator paddles screwed to the wall for decoration. If you ever wonder what it's like to argue with a self-appointed disaster saint in the middle of a statewide wildfire evacuation, picture the worst Yelp reply thread, except you're living inside it, and your only bathroom is a compost bucket. That was me and my brother Alex last August. We'd rented a refurbished Airstream trailer on Airbnb, parked on a private pull-off along Highway 17, because Alex wanted desert photography, and I wanted silence after a brutal quarter at grad school. Day 1 was serene. Day 2, the sky turned ochre, and my phone pushed an evacuation alert. Wind shift had redirected the Grapevine fire toward our county. The host, Wade, messaged saying not to worry. He had a safety plan. Wade rolled up in a lifted pickup, flag decals flapping. He handed us N95 masks and a laminated pamphlet titled Protocol Alpha. It listed steps: conserve water, disable cell tracking, remain at site until he signaled. I pointed out the sheriff's advisory to head south. Wade shook his head. Highway'll clog, trust me. We discussed leaving in Alex's hatchback anyway. Wade stood in front of the car, arms folded, and claimed the gas station down the valley had already been looted and pumps sabotaged. Sounded paranoid, but smoke column looked distant, and Alex sided with caution. That night, radio crackled with evacuation orders. I tried filming the Airstream interior for Insta. Solar-powered lights, stylish copper sink. But the SD card gave a corrupted error. The card had worked hours earlier. Alex's laptop refused to boot. This smelled like sabotage. Next morning, Wade delivered canned stew and confiscated our car keys for safekeeping. He insisted cell towers were offline, which seemed plausible given one bar. Alex, ex-IT, noticed Wade carried a portable signal jammer clipped to his belt. We confronted him. Wade's calm veneer cracked. He yelled about people who ignore the chain of command get others killed. He said he'd served overseas in relief ops. No records confirmed it. We packed anyway, planning to hike the 5 miles to the junction. Wade blocked the trail with his pickup, engine idling. He raised a hand radio, said, "Access denied. Situation unstable, like talking to unseen authorities." Smoke thickened. Embers drifted. Wade herded us back to trailer, promising a convoy at sundown. Inside, Alex pried the floor hatch and found our car keys, plus both SD cards, scratched. Wade must have swiped them. He also found a jerry can of diesel, Plan B. Start a grass fire downwind to force authorities closer. Sounds insane, but brush was already tinder. We soaked the towel in diesel, flicked a flare from Alex's kit. Flames crawled, sending a new smoke column skyward. Wade stormed in, coughing, screaming about sabotage. He grabbed Alex, tried to zip tie his wrists. My adrenaline made the cast iron skillet feel light. I swung at Wade's radio, shattering the jammer too. Crackling dispatcher voices spilled out. Unit 4, new hotspot near mile 12. Sirens approached. Wade backed off, muttering legal threats. Fire crew trucks bounced down the path, ordering everyone to clear out. We pointed at Wade, explained theft and detainment. Deputies later charged him with obstruction. Our car started. The key fob still worked. Evidence of Wade's intimidation was mostly destroyed. Corrupted cards, broken radio. But the flare burn pattern matched our timeline. The Airstream listing vanished the next day. Driving south through orange haze, Alex joked, "Next vacation, hotel with sprinklers." I told him sprinklers can be hacked too, but we agreed at least they'd have proper plumbing. 3 months ago, my 2 grad school friends and I thought we'd scored the ultimate thesis retreat. An Airbnb apartment inside the shuttered Maritime Heritage Museum downtown. The museum was between funding grants and at least its caretaker's suite to cover bills. Sounded quirky and quiet. Perfect for a marathon writing weekend. Night 1. After hours exploring rusted diving bells, we returned to find our door ajar and a placard on the knob. Artifact quarantine. Do not enter. We laughed, figured staff prank, until we noticed the suite had been tidied. Beds made, coffee cups washed. Nothing missing, so we assumed housekeeping crossed wires. During the off-season, the building ran on skeleton sensors. Still, the main hall lights triggered around 2 a.m. when none of us were moving. Chloe viewed motion logs on the security panel. No entries. Next day, we asked our host, Alfred, via chat. He replied within seconds. Absolutely no staff on site. Building empty except you. That night, we bar secured the suite. 3 a.m. Footsteps echoed outside. Crisp heel-toe, then stopped. We found another placard slipped under the door. Inventory complete. We set up an experiment. Mounted GoPros covering the corridor, synced to laptops. Chloe, ex-forensics club, sprinkled talc to capture prints. Cameras armed, we slept. Morning, nothing on GoPros except 3 minutes of static at 1:17 a.m. Right after static resumed, corridor looked undisturbed, but every single talc line was smudged, as though brushed with feather duster. We decided to bail. Bags packed, yet when we reached the lobby, our luggage tags read different names. Mine said, J. Franklin 1912, others similar. Freaky, but maybe an elaborate museum gag. The front doors were chained from the outside, padlock new. Chloe called 999, forgetting we're in the States. We eventually got 911. While waiting, we roamed, hoping for side exits. In the model ship gallery, we saw Alfred, or someone wearing his Airbnb profile smile, dressed now in museum docent blazer, Idaho badge dated 2004. He greeted us like tour patrons, voice canned. Welcome, last visitors of the night. We asked about chains. He pivoted, walked away, vanishing beyond a lighthouse lens you can see straight through. Police arrived 20 minutes later, cutting the padlock. They searched with us. No Alfred, no placards. Security DVR, offline for months. Yet dispatch traced the 911 call to a number registered to Alfred H., museum director, who, according to city records, died in 2011. The Airbnb host identity belonged to a 24-year-old gig worker who said he merely managed listings remotely and never set foot inside. We flew home rattled but safe. Time jumped to last week. Chloe receives a parcel with no return label. Inside is a brass museum badge engraved, Assistant Curator Chloe R., 2026. Future date. We forwarded everything to a journalist friend. He dug city permits and found a recent application to reopen the museum as an interactive historical immersion experience. Applicant: Maritime Memories LLC. Director listed simply as A. Halloway, same initials as Alfred. External intervention came yesterday. The city denied the permit until security concerns addressed. Journalist claims Airbnb yanked all museum residence rentals citywide. Apartment remains listed as unavailable. I keep the luggage tag on my desk. Sometimes I flip it over expecting to find it blank, but the name J. Franklin 1912 stays put. I Googled. Franklin was a deckhand who vanished at sea. If your Airbnb boasts exclusive access to closed attractions, remember exclusive can cut both ways. You might be the only real thing in a place full of better impersonators. I never thought I'd be writing this, but after what happened last month, I need to get it out there. Maybe it'll help someone else avoid what I went through. I'd booked this Airbnb in a small coastal town for a work retreat. The listing looked perfect. A converted lighthouse keeper's cottage with ocean views. The host, Marcus, had hundreds of 5-star reviews. When I arrived during an unseasonably warm October heatwave, the place seemed ideal. Marcus met me at the door, all smiles and local recommendations. The first night was fine. I worked on my laptop, enjoyed the sunset, went to bed early. But the second night, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps on the wooden deck outside. Heavy ones. I figured it was just another guest. The listing mentioned a separate unit below mine. Then I heard the doorknob rattle. I sat up, heart pounding. The rattling stopped, then started again, more insistent. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but there was no signal. The cottage was in a dead zone, something the listing hadn't mentioned. The nearest neighbor was at least a mile away. The rattling turned to pounding, then silence. I crept to the window and peered out. Marcus was standing on the deck, staring directly at where I was hiding behind the curtain. He waved. I backed away, trying to think. The only way out was past him. The windows were sealed shut. For storm protection, he'd explained during check-in. I barricaded the door with the dresser and spent the night awake, clutching a kitchen knife. At dawn, I heard his truck start up and drive away. I shoved my things in my bag and ran to my car. As I peeled out, I saw him in my rearview mirror, walking back from the main road. He'd been waiting. I drove 3 hours before stopping. When I finally got cell service, I had 17 missed calls from him. The voicemail started friendly. "Hey, just checking you're okay." Then got progressively angrier. The last one was just breathing. I reported it to Airbnb and the police. Turns out 3 other women had filed similar reports about Marcus in the past year. The police said without evidence of a crime, there wasn't much they could do. Airbnb suspended his account pending investigation. I still check my doors twice before bed now, and I'll never stay in an isolated Airbnb again. I'm sharing this because I found out yesterday that it's still happening, and I can't stay quiet anymore. 2 years ago, I booked an Airbnb in Chicago for a job interview. Nice brownstone in Lincoln Park, close to the subway. The host, Rachel, lived in the basement unit. She seemed sweet, left me cookies and a handwritten welcome note. Everything was normal until I noticed my laptop had been moved. Just slightly, but I'm particular about how I leave my things. I brushed it off. Then I found my suitcase unzipped when I knew I'd closed it. Small things, but they added up. On my third night, I came back early from dinner with a splitting headache. Rachel's door was cracked open, and I heard voices. My voice. She was playing a recording of a phone conversation I'd had that morning with my mom. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to her and someone else, dissecting my financial situation and relationship status. I crept upstairs and started searching. Found a tiny camera in the smoke detector, another in the bathroom vent. My skin crawled thinking about what they'd seen. I packed in 5 minutes flat and headed for the door. Rachel was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. "Leaving so soon?" she asked. Behind her stood a man I'd never seen before. He was holding a laptop. My laptop, I realized. They'd cloned my hard drive while I was out. I pushed past them and ran. They didn't follow, just watched me go. I could hear them laughing. I went straight to the police station. The detective looked tired when I explained. "Fourth complaint this month about that address," he said. But when they went to investigate, the cameras were gone. Rachel claimed I was confused, possibly on drugs. She had security footage of me acting erratically in the hallway, edited, of course, to remove context. I changed all my passwords, canceled my cards, put a fraud alert on my credit. 6 months later, someone tried to take out a loan in my name. A year later, intimate photos I'd deleted years ago showed up on a revenge porn site. The harassment was sophisticated, untraceable. I found out yesterday that Rachel's still active on Airbnb under a different name. Same brownstone, same basement unit. I've reported it 5 times. They keep telling me they're investigating. I don't know what else to do except warn people. If you're staying in Lincoln Park and your host seems too interested in your life, run. Don't wait for proof. Just run. This happened to me 5 years ago, but I'm only now able to talk about it. I still get nightmares. I was 23, driving cross-country after college graduation. Booked an Airbnb in this tiny Nebraska town because it was cheap and I needed to save money. The host, Bill, said it was a mother-in-law suite behind his main house. Total privacy, he promised. When I arrived after dark, exhausted from 12 hours of driving, something felt off. The suite was more like a converted garage, and it reeked of bleach, but I was too tired to care. I crashed immediately. I woke up to find Bill in my room, just standing there, watching me sleep. I screamed, and he apologized. Said he was checking if I needed extra towels. I should have left then. God, I should have left. The next morning, my car wouldn't start. Bill offered to look at it, said he was handy with engines. While he was under the hood, I noticed scratch marks on the inside of the garage door. Deep ones, like someone had tried to claw their way out. My stomach dropped. I said I'd call AAA instead. Bill's whole demeanor changed. "Now why would you want to do that?" he asked. His son appeared from nowhere, a huge guy who stared at me without blinking. I was trapped between them and my dead car. I made an excuse about needing something from inside and ran back to the room. The door wouldn't lock from the inside. The windows were screwed shut. I called 911, but Bill had given me the Wi-Fi password for a network that didn't exist. My phone was useless without it. I heard them talking outside, arguing about the timeline and making it look natural. My hands shook as I searched for anything I could use as a weapon. Found a screwdriver in a drawer and hid it in my waistband. They knocked. Said they'd fixed my car. Could I come verify it was working? I knew it was a lie, but staying in that room meant certain death. I came out smiling, playing dumb. Asked Bill tons of questions about the engine. Bought myself time to edge toward the driver's door. The keys were still in the ignition. The second I turned them, the engine roared to life. They'd never disabled it, just disconnected the battery cable to make me think it was broken. I slammed it in reverse before they could react. Bill's son lunged for the door handle, but I was already moving. I drove through their lawn, took out a fence, didn't stop until I hit the interstate. In my rearview mirror, I saw them getting into a truck. I drove 90 miles per hour for 2 hours, taking random exits, doubling back. Finally stopped at a busy truck stop and called the police. They found the room I'd stayed in had a hidden panel in the wall. Behind it were women's IDs, 11 of them. I testified at the trial. Bill got life. His son got 40 years. But I still can't sleep in ground floor rooms, and I'll never ever book another rural Airbnb. I need to share what happened to me last week because I'm scared it's not over. I'd booked an Airbnb in Denver for a psychology conference. Beautiful Victorian near the university. The host, James, was a professor who traveled frequently. His profile mentioned he was rarely there, which sounded perfect. First day was great. Did my presentation, networked, crashed early. The second night I woke up to my phone buzzing. A text from an unknown number. "You look peaceful when you sleep." I shot up, grabbed my phone's flashlight, searched the room. Nothing. Checked the locks, all secure. Figured it was a wrong number. Some creep's idea of a joke. Blocked it and tried to go back to sleep. 20 minutes later, another text from a different number. "Blue pajamas suit you." I was wearing blue pajamas. My blood turned to ice. I turned on every light and searched again. No cameras that I could see. But then I noticed something. The mirror on the dresser looked weird, too reflective. I threw a towel over it. Immediately, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again and again. Then a text. That was rude. Take the towel off. I started packing. As I shoved clothes into my suitcase, I noticed the closet door was cracked open. I knew I'd closed it. I grabbed the lamp as a weapon and yanked it wide. James was standing inside, just standing there in the dark, smiling. I screamed and ran. He followed, not running, but walking calmly, like he had all the time in the world. "You're being dramatic," he called out. I just wanted to talk. I burst out of the house into the street. It was 3 a.m., nobody around. I ran toward the main road, barefoot, still in those blue pajamas. Behind me, I heard footsteps speeding up. A 24-hour grocery store appeared like salvation. I ran inside, straight to the security guard. Told him I was being followed. He walked me to the manager's office and they called the police. When the cops arrived, James was standing outside the store, watching through the windows. He told them I was his guest, that I'd had a psychiatric episode during the psychology conference. Even showed them my booking confirmation. It took 2 hours to convince them I wasn't crazy. They finally went to check the house. The two-way mirror was gone. The closet was empty. James had receipts showing he'd been at a hotel across town all week. His security system had mysteriously malfunctioned and recorded nothing. Airbnb refunded me and said they'd investigate. That was it. The police said without evidence, they couldn't do anything. But here's what scares me. I've gotten 3 friend requests this week from profiles with no pictures. Each one has sent the same message. Nice to see you made it home safely. I'm staying with my parents now. I don't know what else to do. What happened to me at an Airbnb 4 months ago ruined my entire life, and I just found out it was all orchestrated. I was in Seattle for 3 weeks of IT training for my new job. Found a nice Airbnb in Capitol Hill. Good reviews, reasonable price. The host, Derek, lived next door and managed several properties. Seemed professional. Everything was fine the first week. Then I started getting weird emails at work. HR pulled me aside. Someone had sent them screenshots of my social media posts with racist content. I don't even use social media. My training supervisor got anonymous tips about my drug problem. My roommate back home received photos of me with another woman. Badly photoshopped, but convincing enough to end my relationship. I was scrambling to do damage control when things got worse. My bank called about suspicious activity. Someone had used my credit card info to buy thousands of dollars of electronics. My phone started glitching. Apps opening by themselves, messages sent I didn't write. My work laptop got infected with malware that spread to the company network. They fired me before I could finish training. Flew home to find my apartment had been broken into. Nothing stolen, but someone had been living there. Eating my food, sleeping in my bed, wearing my clothes. The police found no signs of forced entry. My ex-girlfriend had already blocked me on everything. My friends were getting harassing messages from accounts in my name. Someone filed a false police report saying I'd threatened them. I got arrested at the airport flying back from Seattle. Spent 8 hours in custody before they sorted it out. I was drowning. Lost my job, my relationship, my reputation. Had to move back in with my parents at 28. Spent every penny I had on lawyers and cybersecurity experts. Then last week, I got a LinkedIn message from another former guest of Derek's. Said the same thing happened to him. We compared notes and found 4 more people with identical experiences. All stayed at Derek's properties. All had their lives systematically destroyed. One of them, a woman named Sarah, had kept the Airbnb messaging logs. Derek had asked all of us eerily specific questions during booking about our jobs, relationships, financial situations, like he was gathering intel. We hired a private investigator. Turns out Derek isn't just a property manager. He runs a reputation management company that helps people destroy their enemies online. We were his test subjects, random guests he could practice on without suspicion. We're building a case, but the damage is done. I'm still unemployed, still single, still get anxiety every time my phone buzzes, and Derek still has 5-star reviews on Airbnb, still hosting guests. If you're reading this and you've stayed at a place in Capitol Hill where the host asks too many personal questions, please contact me. We need all the evidence we can get. I'm writing this from my sister's house because I can't go home. Not after what I found out about my Airbnb stay 2 months ago. I'd booked a place in Austin for South by Southwest. Cute bungalow in a trendy neighborhood. The host, Melissa, was super responsive and helpful. Even left a list of local spots to check out. The festival was amazing, but I was exhausted every night. Practically passed out the second I hit the bed. On my last morning, I woke up before my alarm and couldn't fall back asleep. Decided to make coffee and watch the sunrise from the backyard. That's when I saw them. Melissa and 3 other people sitting in lawn chairs in her backyard, all facing my bungalow at 5:30 a.m., just sitting there, watching. They had notebooks. I ducked down, peeked through the blinds. One of them pointed at my window, and they all wrote something down. Then they got up and left like it was totally normal. I was creeped out, but figured maybe they were bird watchers or something. Austin's weird, right? I left for the airport without saying anything. Got home and forgot about it until I developed the photos from my film camera. In half of them, there were people in the background I hadn't noticed. The same 4 people. At the barbecue place. At the venue. At the taco truck. Always watching me. Always taking notes. I went back through my digital photos with growing horror. They were everywhere. How had I not seen them? Then I found the Instagram account. At Subject Austin 47. Hundreds of photos of me. Sleeping, eating, walking, showering. The captions were clinical, like observations. Subject exhibits signs of fatigue. Subject chose vegetarian option. Subject's gait suggests lower back pain. The account had 3 followers. I clicked on one, at Subject Austin 46. Different person, same type of photos, dated the week before my stay. The other 2 were at Subject Austin 45 and at Subject Austin 48. We were all women, all traveling alone, all stayed in Melissa's bungalow. I messaged the other women. 2 responded. They'd had strange experiences too. Exhaustion, lost time, weird bruises they couldn't explain. One had gone to the doctor after her trip and found a puncture mark on her thigh she couldn't account for. We reported it to Airbnb, to the police, to anyone who would listen. The Instagram accounts vanished overnight. Melissa's Airbnb listing disappeared. When Austin PD went to the address, the neighbors said no one named Melissa had ever lived there. But here's what terrifies me. Last week, I got a medical bill for blood work I never authorized. The lab is in Austin. The tests were extensive. Genetic screening, hormone panels, drug metabolites. Things you'd run if you were conducting human experiments. My sister thinks I'm paranoid, but I've installed new locks, security cameras, the works. Because if they were studying us for something, I don't think they got what they wanted, and I'm scared they're going to come back for round 2. If you stayed in a bungalow in East Austin and felt weird after, please reach out. We need to figure out what they did to us. This happened 3 weeks ago, and I'm still processing it. I haven't even told my family yet. I'd booked an Airbnb in Portland for a friend's wedding. Beautiful craftsman house in Laurelhurst, walking distance to everything. The host, Connor, mentioned he lived in the mother-in-law unit out back, but kept to himself. The wedding was Saturday. Friday night, I went out with the bridal party and got back around midnight. Slightly tipsy, but not drunk. I noticed Connor's lights were on and music was playing. Some kind of meditation chants. Whatever, not my business. I woke up at 3 a.m. to silence. Absolute silence. No traffic, no wind, nothing. Even my own breathing seemed muted. Then I realized I couldn't move. Not paralysis exactly. I could feel everything. But my body wouldn't respond to my brain's commands. I lay there, terrified, trying to scream. Only my eyes would move. The bedroom door opened. Connor walked in with 2 other people, all wearing surgical masks. They spoke in whispers I couldn't understand. One of them pulled out a syringe. I fought with everything I had to move, to make any sound. Nothing. The needle went into my arm. They drew blood, lots of it. Then they started examining me, shining lights in my eyes, checking my reflexes, taking my pulse. Clinical. Detached. One of them noticed my eyes following their movements. They seemed surprised. There was a hurried discussion. Then Connor leaned over me. "You're not supposed to be conscious," he said. "This will help." Another injection. The world went fuzzy but didn't disappear. I could still see, still hear, but everything was distant. Dreamlike. They wheeled in equipment I couldn't identify. Attached sensors to my head. The machine beeped and hummed while they watched screens I couldn't see. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time meant nothing. Eventually, they packed everything up. Connor stood over me one last time. "You won't remember this," he said. "You had too much to drink. You're going to wake up feeling embarrassed about passing out, maybe a little sick. That's normal." They left. Slowly. So slowly. Feeling returned to my body. First my fingers, then my arms. By sunrise I could sit up. My arm had 2 puncture marks. My head pounded. And I remembered everything. I packed in record time and left before Connor could see me. Drove straight home, didn't even go to the wedding. Spent the next week researching what they'd done, why I'd been paralyzed, what those machines might have been. Found nothing concrete, but I found forums. People describing similar experiences. Always in Airbnbs. Always hosts who lived on property. Always the same type of equipment, the same procedures. No one knows what they're looking for, or why. Most people convinced themselves it was a sleep paralysis or a nightmare. But the puncture marks were real. The headache was real. And the fear, that was the most real thing I've ever felt. I've started a spreadsheet. Dates, locations, host names, looking for patterns. If you've experienced something similar, please add your story. Maybe together we can figure out what's happening before more people get hurt. Because Connor's still active on Airbnb. 5-star reviews. And that beautiful craftsman house is available for booking.